Hey Ardmore, this is Pastor Michael Rogers from the JAR Ministries, and I am standing here right in front of the door to the old Northeast Baptist Church on 7th and H. It's now the new second home of Solid Rock Ministries with Pastor Steve Skinner, and they hope to eventually have services here eventually in the mornings, but in the afternoons they have been gracious to host us here as the JAR at 4 p.m. And so I'm here in front of this church, but it's to introduce a whole new series that we're trying to do each week. We're calling it TOOSDAY, T-O-O, Tuesday. And really what it does is it explores the different reasons why we have a hard time committing to making the spiritual side of things a part of our lives. And so today, for the very first one, I'm going to stand in front of the church to talk about those of you who may feel like I'm too hurt by the church to attend weekly gatherings anymore. Some of you are out there and you have just, there has been some event that's happened in your life. Maybe someone preached something that hurt you really badly, or maybe someone just said a snide comment in the hallway and you just can't forget it. Or maybe you were a leader in the church and you were treated poorly and you struggled. Maybe you're a pastor and you went through years. I always, as a pastor myself, people come to me and say, yeah, people at the church were mean to me, and I think, ask any pastor who's been a pastor for a year and they'll tell you, yeah, there's times when they're mean, because most pastors about once a month have something like that happen. So maybe that's you, or maybe it's someone, maybe you went to church as a kid and your parents were hurt, or maybe you were hurt as a teenager because somebody did something to you or said something to you or bullied you while you were in a church youth group. And whatever the reason is, you're now at a place in your life where you're just saying, I'm just too hurt by the church to come back. Well, I don't know if you realize this, but the same thing could be said by the Apostle Paul. If you look at the book of Philippians, in the first chapter, Paul's in prison, and he's writing to these people in Philippi, which is interesting because when Paul went to Philippi, he was imprisoned by the Romans for his faith. Now he's in prison in Rome, writing back to the Philippians from prison, and he's admitting to them that his imprisonment is actually furthering the gospel in a lot of ways, and he's really excited about that. But then he goes on to say this in chapter 1, verse 12. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard, and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. He sees the value of all of that. And then he says, some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. Some of these people are just, they're upset because Paul's getting all the kudos, all the limelight. He's the one who's in prison. He's the one who's the face of the organization, so to speak. And these people out of envy are preaching Christ. And some of them are saying, well, look, Paul, he can't be very good at it. Look at, he's in prison. So I'm going to do it even better than him. And so he's at a rivalry they're preaching. And he says, the latter, those who are doing it out of rivalry and envy, but others from goodwill. The latter, the ones who do it from goodwill, do it out of love, knowing that Paul was there to put there for the defense of the gospel. But the former, the ones who are rivals, the ones who are jealous, the former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. In other words, the fact that Paul was imprisoned gave them an opportunity. If they preached the gospel and they made a big deal about it, it may be that Paul would be treated even worse in prison than he would normally have. And so they are preaching literally to cause Paul trouble. And so as we look at that, we see Paul acknowledges it. He recognizes that there are people in the church who are doing these things, and they are doing it, and it's selfish, and it's mean. And then he says, what then? What do I do about that then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense for the wrong reasons or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. I look at that passage and I just realize that people have been hurt by the church ever since the church was the church. And the reason is because that's where the people are. Have you ever seen this? There's the church, there's the steeple, open the door, and there's the problem. We are all still people and all still have sin natures, and we all still struggle with that. We are all still yearning and trying and growing and trying to figure out what to do. And some of us are telling the truth about the gospel, but we're not treating people the way the gospel suggests we treat them. If you're one of those people who got affected that way, I want to encourage you. Do what Paul did. Hang on to your faith. Gather anyway. Let people know about Jesus anyway. Do the things that are necessary, because the truth is the enemy is often dealing most with the people who can make the most influence. If you are already doing things that are going to help the enemy do his thing, he doesn't care. He just kick back on his desk and let you do the work. Put his feet up on the desk, let you do the work. But if there is a chance that you could be a benefit to the people of the world, then he's going to do his best to try to get you out of it. And one of the best ways to do that is to make you so angry at the body of Christ that you don't give yourself a chance to listen to the gospel of Christ. So, now you can tell for sure I'm close to 7th Avenue because there's the train going through at just the right time. So here's what I would say. There are some great places to gather here in Ardmore. H2O over close to Long Grove with Chuck McKennell. Corinth up on the northeast side with Pastor Abraham. Down in the southeast side, Pastor John Cradle at Mount Zion is preaching great things. Right downtown, Jim Yeager is preaching things at Wild Church that you need to hear. And the people are gathering, and they're trying to do their best to love people. Pastor Steve Skinner on the south side at Solid Rock. And we believe that we're going to be doing the same thing at the Jar at 4 o'clock on Sundays. We're meeting right now at the community center, but I just want you to know that you will be welcomed at any one of those places. Oh, another Pastor Jeremy over at Victory Life on the south side in one of the plazas. I only mentioned a few from pastors that I've met, but I'm telling you, there are a lot of great gatherings around Ardmore. And even if you've been hurt, just remember, you were not hurt by the church. You were not hurt by a church. You were not even hurt by all the people in the church. You were hurt by a few people in a church somewhere. And God did not condone that. So, give it another chance. Gather somewhere. Happy Tuesday.